And dang, it's small.
Shock of being in a little town?
A bit, just a little bit.
Okay. How's it working?
Yeah, it's working fine, as far as I can tell.
Let's hear the sound.
If an arm speak like this,
Yeah.
he has it. He said he will give it to the
Oh, that's
museum.
wonderful.
Now, I want to tell you something. They have one like it at the university in Kingsville, and it is under a dome because they are worth probably a couple $1,000 typewriters. They're
Well,
old-fashioned, that's the arm bit.
If your family elects to donate it, then all of that is tax deductible. And if they elect to just loan it, we will make
Do
sure.
you think we
it's
make
cared for.
enough money to get pay taxes?
Yeah, sure.
He's retired and I'm retired.
Okay. All right, quiet. And Our Lady who's going to keep order is right back there. So if you feel somebody whack you on the head, that's her. Don't take it
Very
personally.
sweet.
And roll.
Wait a minute, what is she?
Okay, we're rolling.
We're in the Port Aransas Museum. We're talking to Mrs. Gaulding. Would you please tell us your full name?
What is Edney Lois Miller Gaulding?
Can you tell me when the Gauldings first moved to Port Aransas?
We need to get that book out, don't we?
Well, let's start somewhere else. Now, we're sitting in the house that the Gauldings used to live in. Our museum was built in this house. We saved it and turned it into a museum, and the purpose of all this interviewing here is to just get the history of our house. As you can see from the exhibit on the wall, our first exhibit was, whose house is this? Or whose house was this? So tell me, when did you first see this house?
When I was 18 years old. I came with my boyfriend who I married several years later. And my boyfriend was the youngest brother of Bob Gaulding.
Go ahead, tell us the story.
Well, we weren't married at that time, but we came over, and what we would do at that time was we would either shoot ducks in the salt flats, and then we came back and we talked to the telephone operator, and she would tell all the people on the island that wanted ducks. And this was in, what? And still in the late 1930s, about 38, 39. And we did that. We just shared with the people on the island. They would call people and they would come and get the ducks. But later on, when we married and ran the Buckhorn cottages, we had a 420-foot beach net. And we would catch the drum. At that time, you could get a wash tub full of drum in a drag. And when we did, we came to town and we would call the switchboard operator. We lived in one of the cottages at the Buckhorn cottages. And the people would come and they got one fish for each member of the family and an extra fish. And we would give away 2 and 3 wash tubs full of fish to the people. And then, I'm trying to think later on. Well, I'll have to skip a couple of years because when Aggie South moved here and had the cafe, we gave fish to Aggie South, and they were drum. The next day she had fillet of redfish in the cafe. Or if we caught we saved all of the crabs for her. And the leopard crabs, they would take them out and they made stuffed crabs, and then she would have stuffed crabs. But we were always rewarded because the next morning we would find either a fifth of liquor on the porch or a case of beer, because we would never accept money. We could not take pay for the fish.
Barter system.
But she always left us. And then we never had to pay for food. When we ate in her cafe, we never paid for food or drinks because that was always free.
At this point, Have you and your husband gotten married? Is he still your
Yes,
boyfriend?
yes, that was, I skipped from way, because in between time, he went overseas. He went in the South Pacific for 4 years. He was in the service. But see, he was in the fire department from the age of 19 till he died at the age of 65 and 1 month. So all of his life, he was in the fire department, about 46 years.
And when did you two get married?
January the 1st in 41 or 2.
After you got married, did you move to Port Aransas and into the Buckhorn?
No, we did that in the summertime, the Buckhorn cottages then were belonged to Miss Halton, and she was Ruth Gaulding. She was the second child of the family, Bob's oldest sister, Bob and then Ruth. And she had the Buckhorn cottages, and we came over and we ran them before the kids started school. Then after the kids started school, we only came over in the summertime.
So Miss Haltom was also a Gaulding.
Yes, she was Ruth Gaulding, and she was second oldest, right under Bob.
Okay. She come down here about the time that Bob did, or was she here before that?
I know when her husband still lived, they came because he got killed on the road somewhere between Carpus and Aransas Pass in an accident. But they owned the Buckhorn cottages. That was belonged to the Haltoms.
We can look that up.
But I guess I should back up and tell about when my husband came over. See, that's why I needed that book, because I can't remember the years. When Tom was 17 or 18 years old is when he came with Bob and them here.
Tom is your husband.
Yeah, he was Ralph Thomas Gaulding.
And he was 18 years old.
Around 18. He delivered the groceries. They didn't have a causeway at that time. He would get in a car and they would go down the beach and they would cross over where it's now South Paviala. And they carried a red flag. And if he carried the flag, nobody could get on that one way. And he would go to Carpus and get the groceries for Bob, and then he'd come back and then they would deposit the flag. You could only go back and forth one at a time because there was no crossway at that time.
How did he come to live with Bob and Mary?
Well, my husband's father, they were the owners of Cole Park Pier, him and Mr. Cole and another person. And his father, when my husband was 18 months old, was on the end of the pier, Cole Park Pier at that time. He had a heart attack and fell in the water and washed up, drowned, and my husband was 18 months old. But he lived with his mother, and then I think he was about 14 years old. He ran away from home, and they found him in Florida, and they brought him back, and then Bob and Mary kept him from there. And they lived in Itasca, and when he finished high school at the age of 16, he worked in the bank in Itasca with Bob. And that's when they moved here, is after that.
So he would have been 17 or 18 years old. You know, this house was built to be the Coast Guard station. Did the Gauldings ever talk about that?
No, see, Bob was 21 years older than my husband. And my husband was 9 years older than I was, so there was 30 years difference. And Bob was always back of that meat counter. And he kept the store open 7 days a week. So I never really, you know, and by that time, before we were married, I didn't waste any time with his old brother. I was with the young one.
Sure.
You know, and we just came over for the day. And that's when I first met Eddie Martin from the Martin family. He turned out to be our best family friend, and my son was named in honor of Eddie Martin. His name is Ralph Edward.
Was your son born in Corpus Christi? Were all your children born in Corpus Christi?
Yes.
Okay.
See, my husband was in the fire department there.
Right. So about how old were you when you and your husband met?
When we met, I was going to a business college in Corpus and was living with his with his sister to work in her store. She lived on Air Street. She had apartment houses. And then next door she had a store, and then there was Winseal. So I would work in her store before school, then I would catch a bus and go downtown to business college, come back in the afternoon and clerk in her store. And then he lived at the fire station on Morgan Street. And they worked 5 days and nights before they ever got a night off. But he ate at his mother's house, and that's where I met him, through his mother.
Ah. Mother or his sister?
His sister, I keep
Sister.
saying mother.
Okay.
His sister Ruth.
So how old were you about then?
About that time I was probably 18 or 19, no, let's put it 19.
19.
19.
Okay. Fell in love?
Well, we married when I was 21.
When you were 21?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then he went into the service, went to the South Pacific, but he was in the service 4 years,
Navy?
Army.
Army.
Well, he was a fireman and they put him in chemical warfare, but he ended up, the Japanese bomb in Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor.
That's where he ended up. He ended up in the fire department in Pearl Harbor.
How'd he do?
That's where he ended.
Right. Then he came back home.
Well, after 4 years, he served his 4 years, and he went right back into the fire station.
So you lived most of your life in Corpus Christi with him?
Yes,
Okay.
because when he died, my youngest one was in, how long were you in school? Just 5 weeks or 6 weeks? 1 week. So then I had to go to work to put her through 5 years of college.
Did you start visiting, did you visit Port Aransas a lot after you got married?
Well, yes, up until before that, and then when he came back, that's when we took the Bullhorn Cottage over. So that was, I can't remember.
We can figure that out.
We can figure that out.
We can figure that out. So then you'd come in the summer and run the cottages?
Well, I was here longer than that until Mary started school. Then I had to go home for school.
Let's take a break here while the interviewer shuts his phone off. She should have done it way long ago.
I wish you.
Well, I should put in there that we became good friends of
Okay.
Alfred Hunt, Chief Hunt, and his family from the Coast Guard.
Mr. Hunt?
Yeah, he was Chief Hunt at that time.
Okay. So you came down here and you were running the cottages in the summertime. They were owned by your husband's aunt?
It was my husband's sister, his older sister,
Okay.
Ruth Halton.
All right. And while you were here, what did you do for fun?
We went fishing a lot. I think I brought you a picture of me with all the mackerel.
You did?
My husband and Eddie Martin went out in a 12-foot boat with a 5-horse motor. Went out by, I said, is it the whistle buoy or something out there? And that's when I caught all the mackerel. But then later on they left that because the boat was named Hardhead. But they called it the Peanut Shell. But then somebody volunteered to take my husband and myself and Eddie Martin out in a 24-foot boat with a motor, and it died. We sat out there, and I was worried to death because I thought we were going to drown. Finally, some ship came by and pulled us in, but I said, so the last time I was going fishing on a big boat, go out in the little one. And there were times